All right, welcome everyone to Going to College in COVID 2019. I am J.R. Harding, and I'm excited to be here with students with the University of Choice Initiative. All of you have a copy of the presentation on your chairs, and on the back of the page is a minor little post-presentation survey, if you would be kind enough to complete that and leave that with Pedro. Pedro, raise your hand on your way out, or one of us. It would be fantastic. Well, here, this is the 23rd Annual Family Cafe, a place where we come together as a family, a place where we advocate, a place where we learn. And I'm excited to be here with 5 FSU students, all learning and working and collaborating during this COVID time. But before we jump into today's presentation, it's important to know what are our objectives. So, getting to know UOC, the COVID experience in higher education, our social and academic experiences, and then of course, most importantly, the student perspective on issues. We have one student who's still in his sleeping clothes and headset, kind of reminiscent of this year that's gone by, and others are all professionally dressed. And one is even on Zoom with us today because she wasn't able to physically get here. We believe in accommodating, right? That's the spirit of the disability community, overcoming barriers. And uniquely, many of us have learned to thrive and achieve our goals and our objectives despite this pandemic. So first, who is the University of Choice? It is a student-centered organization with and without disabilities. We strive to empower, promote, and foster inclusion throughout the university community, both off and on campus. Some of our friends are in the audience today, and some of our friends are online with us today. We recognize and celebrate all abilities and all tools, because together we're stronger. So in order to get this going, you didn't come here to hear me speak, but rather you came here to hear these students speak and to learn from them. They did their own research, their own quantitative and qualitative perspective of learning and thriving with COVID. So I'd like to turn it over to Tyler to have him begin the introduction process with our students here today.
All right, thank you, JR, and hello to everyone who's here and those who are watching online. So we're gonna get started introducing our panelists and our presenters, and JR and I. So we're gonna first hand it over to Carly, and she's gonna introduce herself.
Thank you, Tyler. My name is Carly Fulcher. I'm the president of the University of Choice Initiative. I first got involved as a freshman as part of a class I took through our Office of Accessibility Services, which JR was helping out teach. Currently, I am the president. I just finished my 3rd year at FSU. As a junior, I'm majoring in cello performance.
All right, next we have Evan Weinstein, and he'll quickly tell us about himself.
Hey everyone, my name is Evan Weinstein. I just graduated FSU, graduated my senior year, and I'm going to be going to UT Austin. I'm leaving in about a month, starting in training for an assistantship with housing. I was originally secretary for University of Choice, and I've been doing that the past 2 years. I've been a member of UOC for the past 3, starting my sophomore year. I discovered it through FSU card, and as I was looking for different internships. So that's the story with me. I graduated with Psych and Family Child Sciences, and yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Nora Mark. I am an upcoming senior at FSU, and like Carly, I found out about this organization through the OAS, and I've been with this organization since freshman year.
All right, and now we have our virtual presenter, so we're going to see if we can get Mira on board so she can introduce herself. All right, then I'll do one of my least favorite things, is talking about myself. My name is Tyler Brufak. I am a doctoral student in the sociology department at FSU, and I've been a member of UOC for a couple of years. And I really care about advocating for the disability community, and that's an immediate draw of UOC, is that it feels like, you know, you're part of something a little bit bigger, and it's nice to find a group of people who care so much about disability rights at FSU. So I'm happy to be here, and then I'll hand it over to JR for a little bit so he can tell us more about himself.
Thank you, Tyler. I've had the privilege of being part of this group for now almost 5 years, and it's because of the students, because of their passion, that we fight hard to find the possibilities and to demonstrate our contributions to the university community. So it's just exciting to be here on our first road trip together. We all got in yesterday, broke bread, practice our presentation, and hopefully have a good show for you today.
All right, now we have a virtual presenter, so we're going to try and have Mira speak through the tablet, through the microphone.
Wonderful. Can everybody hear me? Okay, wonderful. So my name is Mira Gatanis, and I, okay. All right, my name is Mira Gatanis, and I'm the Vice President of the University of Choice, and I've been a part of it for 2 years now, and I'm majoring in media and communication studies.
All right, thank you, Mira. See, we've already overcome one barrier today, so I think we're doing a great job. So at this point, we're going to talk about what spurred this research project of ours that we're presenting to you today, and how it's really unique in this moment, as you all know, but also we're gonna kind of share how we've been thinking about it and researching it for this past half a year or so. So at Florida State University, between 15 and 16% of our student body identify as having a disability. And that's a pretty big deal. Like, obviously, we know that disability rights are important generally, but to know that such a substantial portion of our FSU community identifies as having a disability just makes it even more important to better understand their social and educational experiences. We also know that based on research and anecdotal evidence as well, that stigma is something that pervades the social lives of students with disabilities through relationships with their peers, relationships with faculty, and with staff as well. And in fact, the expectation of awkward social encounters and devaluation because of their disabilities is something that is known to reduce their emotional well-being and is one barrier to them completing their education. And so we wanted to investigate how the social experiences of students with disabilities interacted with, this current pandemic moment over the past year. We know that for the vast majority of people at FSU and across universities as well, that there was a massive transition to remote coursework. This means not only did the academic scenes change for many students, but also that the social settings changed as well. In university, educational and social experiences are very, very closely intertwined, as some of our panelists will talk about today. And the changing social setting, I must have been holding my microphone a little far away. But this changing social setting made it difficult for many students to connect with their peers, friends, and family in ways that they're used to, and I think students with disabilities were certainly no exception. And so we are distinguishing between two different perspectives, trying to understand how students with disabilities navigated their social lives and their educational journeys during the pandemic. These are certainly not mutually exclusive, but we're going to talk about them as if they are, just to be a little more simplistic here. So first we have the adaptive perspective. And the adaptive perspective, as we see it, is the notion that students with disabilities, because of their experiences leading up to the pandemic, had more practice molding their social and educational experiences to their needs. Navigating things like online technologies related to education, connecting with people in different ways, are things that the disability community has a lot of practice in. And that was before the pandemic started. And so rather than being forced to learn all of these new things starting in March 2020, perhaps students with disabilities were pretty well prepared. We also have the stigma perspective, which is our second perspective, or the idea that disability stigma is something that has systematically restricted students' abilities to form high-quality relationships in university settings. That certainly doesn't mean that they couldn't do so, but they're at a disadvantage. This is an important barrier that impacts their emotional well-being. And so this perspective is saying that on the whole, they had fewer quality relationships to draw on during this time of need. And so we tried to quantitatively test these perspectives, constructing a small survey that tested students with and without disabilities at Florida State. And so broadly, what this survey measured was we asked students at FSU about their educational experiences, their social experiences, and their life satisfaction. This was around March or April of this year. And so this allowed us to anonymously record how they felt about their relationships in that moment and also reflect on how it compared to before the pandemic. We are going to specifically focus on students with disabilities and their social relationships during COVID-19. We'll sprinkle a little bit of information about education in there too, because like we all know, those are very closely intertwined. And we're specifically going to focus on the social relationships that these students held with their family and friends. So a little bit of info about our sample that I'm gonna share with you. So we had a total sample of about 100 students, and we reduced it to 64 in this analysis just because of data restrictions. So we had roughly 50 students with disabilities, 17 without. Some common identities that we found is that we found our sample is largely identified as white, Hispanic, and or Latino. And they had relatively high education and income. So this is telling you a little something about our sample in case we would like to reflect on what these analyses are truly reflecting. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We asked students about 6 questions about their social relationships, and this set of questions was asked about their family and about their friends. Largely what we found, this is one of our main results, is that we only found a very slight difference in one aspect of social support, which was that students with and without disabilities differed slightly in their family support. We also found, after digging further, that this was rather negligible because of the age differences between students with disabilities and students without disabilities. So the overall conclusion that we found in this instance was that there was a lot of similarity in the social experiences and the social support available to students, regardless of their disability status. We also found that these groups of students were remarkably similar in how they viewed their social relationships changing across the pandemic. It was rather split between whether or not students thought the relationship quality reduced because of the pandemic for many reasons, such as not being able to interact in proximity to these people, as well as being face-to-face, spending more time alone. And so we overall found more evidence for the adaptive perspective than for the disability stigma perspective. And now we're gonna focus more on the actual experiences of our panelists. We think the qualitative information that's provided here will be more illustrative than the small sample we collected. So I'm going to stop talking now. And I'm going to start asking our panelists some questions about how they dealt with the pandemic and some themes we found in their anecdotal experiences. So I'm gonna hand the microphone over to Carly to talk about how she established community during the pandemic.
Over the past year, a lot of what I've done with community is, thankfully I already had a pretty strong community to draw on, just being a music student. Even though FSU is a big school that has, I think, over 40,000 students now, the College of Music itself is very self-contained. It's a close-knit group of people, and I have a close-knit group of friends. So I was able to draw on those existing connections, and that helped, I think, in a way to give me the confidence to reach out to other people. And a lot of what I tried to take on during the pandemic to make new connections was involved in my future plans with going on to a master's program to continue studying the cello at a higher level. And what is very typical in the process of taking auditions and moving on to that next level is to make connections with potential professors you'll study with, because in undergrad you study with the same music professor for 4 years. In master's it's the same thing, it's 2 years. So you're spending a lot of time with that person, you want to make sure there's a connection there. And typically what you do is you fly around the country to all of the schools you're considering auditioning at and play for those people in person the summer before your senior year. But I didn't have the opportunity to do that because of COVID. So I saw it as another opportunity to reach out to them, because people, even my own professor, were all having to teach over Zoom, because that was the only way to continue to have lessons and study your instrument. So I emailed professors from all over the country, all of these different schools I was considering. Some of them I found myself, some of them I got recommendations for. And I think I ended up playing for between 20 and 30 people over Zoom, FaceTime and whatnot, that I had never met before, had never met me. And I'll tell you, meeting someone over Zoom for the first time is a scary thing. But I was able to make a lot of new connections that way, and some I'm considering auditioning for in the future. So that was really cool, and that was a large part of what I did to build community. Another project of mine is I worked with FSU Card as a peer mentor. We did a lot of online things for the Card clients in North Florida, and one of them was to help transition children and teens on the spectrum to going back to school in person or as a hybrid model. So that's something I helped out with and was able to speak to my own experience, you know, being that age, but also having to deal with the hybrid model of college and all of that. So I was able to find community in that way with people who were far away from I am, because when the semester ended or when we went online, I had to go home. I had to go back to South Florida. I live about 7 hours away from Tallahassee, so I was far from all of them, but we were able to make connections that way online.
All right, so I know Mira also thinks that this is something that was important in her experience, so I'm going to try and get Mira to give us a little info about her experience with establishing community.
Thank you so much. I think it's important to think about how establishing community within the... Sorry, it sounds like I'm breaking up on my end. Can you guys hear me?
You're clear. Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, wonderful. So I'll keep going. I just wanted to double check, make sure. In regards to establishing community, I worked with multiple organizations. I mainly volunteered with the organization, the Tallahassee Youth Orchestra. Once they were safely socially distancing and having small groups of musicians, I was working alongside Ashley Hagedorn Bryan, who is a viola, she teaches viola. And so I was able to safely work with students, which was a really great way to have me experience and understand what I want to do in the future, which is possibly work with kids or something like that. So that was something that was really important to me in establishing community, despite the pandemic, was working with those music students within the Tallahassee Youth Orchestra through volunteering service with the Service Scholar program at Florida State University.
So that's really interesting. So we have Carly, who did a lot more virtual engagement, is what I'm getting. And then we have Mira, who spent more time outside FSU community. Sorry, the connection's a little fuzzy. Outside the FSU community and taking more steps and measures to mitigate the risk that the current moment presented. So Evan, how does that resemble your experience?
All right, everybody. So, senior year has been pretty interesting for me, considering that not a lot's been going on, and like a lot of campus activities have been closed down. So I had to make a little more effort to figure out what I was gonna do with myself over the past year, as far as activities were concerned. A lot of my focus this year has been trying to graduate, and also the first semester was getting into grad school, and I was able to do that. I applied for like 12 schools. I got accepted into quite a few, and then for the second half of the semester, that focus was on applying for assistantships and finding funding. And I could say I was able to accomplish both of those things last year. So that was my big takeaway from it all. As far as academics, I did reasonably well. I was able to maintain my grades in academics pretty well, and the result is I graduated. I'd say with establishing community here at FSU in my last year, I did a lot more stuff pertaining to I did a lot more groups consisting within the community. I joined this one tennis group composed of grad students. It was kind of a branch off the tennis club at FSU, but not really associated with the club. I knew people from racquetball that I've been playing with for the past few years since my freshman year. I've been doing stuff with University of Choice, attending meetings, doing my secretarial duties, contributing to the group. I also hung out with friends from Adventure Club, and that's a group with the campus, but they weren't doing anything formal. I did some interesting stuff. I did stand-up comedy the night before I came back to Vero Beach, and that was a fun experience. People liked it. I was literally just coming off with stuff from the top of my head. So, I'd say over this past year, it's given me, I guess, more opportunities to do different things, and despite not as much going on and not as much of a campus life, it's given me a future, a path to partake on for after my years in undergrad. So I'm thankful.
Maybe we can have you do a set later today. So another theme that was really, another theme that we found in both the quantitative data but also our panelists' responses was maintaining relationships and the challenges associated with that. So I'm gonna pass it over to Nora to talk about how she maintained relationships during this time.
So before COVID began, I was in a cappella group at my school called Vox. And it was my first year there. I was a sophomore. I'm a commercial music student, so I thought it was a great way to branch out and meet new people throughout campus and who love singing. And I was lucky enough to kind of learn from the older members of the group that were doing the social media, reaching out to people, and finding like venues for us to perform. And so I kind of took that and learned from it and kind of used it during COVID, because social media was huge for me in maintaining relationships, especially with this group. I was very lucky that I already had this foundation in the beginning of COVID, so I was able to learn how to use social media tools like Instagram, Facebook. Even though I don't really go on Facebook, it's really more for like older people, but I kind of learned how to use those in a more advanced way. And so I deepened my relationship through the use of social media. I was very shy at first about using social media because I just thought it wasn't like a genuine way of communication. I kind of thought it wasn't really offering as much as it would in person, but I had to learn that it was okay to be active on social media and not to be so shy, and know it's okay to reach out to people. And so I've kind of taken that for the future, and I think it's an awesome tool, especially that it's new, and that's how a lot of younger people are communicating now. So
That make you feel like you said that it was challenging to it was challenging at first to use social media for you is what you said, and maybe because you felt uncomfortable, but tell us more about how those social interactions felt. Did you feel like you were socially fulfilled, or were you just trying to better understand the benefits of getting interactions?
I feel that it was just challenging. The most challenging part about it was trying to say things in a way that you're delivering the message you are intending, instead of messages that people could take a lot of different meanings from. That was the hardest part about social media for me, was making sure that my intent was clearly delivered throughout communication and messaging. So.
All right, so we're gonna try and get Mira back on, but for now I want to ask Carly about how she maintained relationships and any challenges she had.
Sure. So maintaining relationships has never been something that is easy for me. I am on the autism spectrum. It is an ongoing challenge. So this didn't make it any easier, but in a way I think my past challenges helped prepare me for that. One of the easier things was maintaining a connection with this group, because we really just switched to Zoom meetings. That's something we were familiar with. We were actually kind of early adopters of it, because in the past we'd used it for people who just weren't able to attend our meetings in person, whether for just disability or convenience reasons. It was very common for us to meet over the summer over Zoom, just because we weren't all in the same place. So really more of where I saw challenges was with my friends, because my sophomore year, which is when this started, I lived in a dorm with a bunch of other music majors. Many of them were my close friends, and some of them were even right next to me on the same floor. So I was very used to having them involved in almost every aspect of my life, seeing them every day, and just they were always there. And all of a sudden, we were in these different places all over the country, hundreds of miles away from each other, and still trying to do school, and it was very strange. And for the remainder of that semester, and when we were doing a lot of online school things, part of how we handled that was just connecting over assignments, like, oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. It's like, oh, I don't either. We're connecting in that way, just being kind of lost together. But a lot of what I had to do was find new ways to connect with people, and even on an individual basis, because some people for texting, some call, some don't want to call. I found a number of my friends actually liked Zoom, and we had many calls just going into the late night, chatting about what is going on in our lives and things, which was not much, but because that was shared in all of us, we connected in that way. And I think that helped deepen our relationship, but it was hard at first just figuring out what worked for everyone. I myself challenged myself to reach out to at least one of my friends or someone in my life once a day, unless someone happened to reach out to me first, and then I would connect with them, just to keep those conversations and those relationships going. And that helped a lot, and I found it was actually to deepen a lot of my friendships that way.
I think something that's rather thematic about our panelists so far is that there is a lot more intention behind how we connected with other people. One example of social connection that we don't always think about are kind of those unintentional interactions you have with people, like if you go to a coffee shop or if you go to the bookstore and you run into somebody, and they might seem like just very small, but they're actually really socially fulfilling, and they were a big part of our day before the pandemic, and perhaps after too. And we're still trying to get Mira on. See, this is one of the challenges that we have all the time. All right, so right, let's see if she's on. Hold on, 1 minute. Mira, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, all right. So tell us about how you maintain relationships during this time and any challenges you encountered.
They're friends that I've had for a really long time, and through the pandemic, we've had to work. Oh, did it break up?
No, you have a lapel mic now, so it probably sounds different, but we're working with it, or whatever
Oh,
this is. Yeah.
okay, but can you heard up to that point?
Yeah, you're good. Keep going.
Okay, thank you. So my band is Flat Moon Theory, and being able to maintain those social connections was a difficult effort. Social distancing, they're singing or playing instruments. We don't. This is still create music during stations. A rule of thumb in boundary settings. We had to work and navigate through a lot of different boundaries. At first, we rehearsed outside on my porch, and then as people got vaccinated, we were able to rehearse and distancing and everything like that. So regarding maintaining connections, it was a lesson in boundary setting and working on being flexible and trying to find innovative ways to still meet and create music with my band. And we're actually going to be able to share our next album on the 26th of this month, which we created throughout the course of the pandemic. So I thought that was really exciting, a really interesting experience to still create despite these challenges.
All right, that was awesome. So again, having to be more intentional about setting your boundaries and what you're comfortable with is something that Mira had to deal with as well, but in her own unique way, just as all of our panelists. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about navigating online life. And so this is both in terms of social experiences as well as academic. So how did you navigate, your social milieu? How did you Zoom with your friends on weekends, or what aspects of being online were important for you, and what challenges might you have faced? We're gonna start with Nora.
Scheduling was really tough because everyone, even though there was not much to do, everyone had to figure out their own schedules and oh, I can't this time. So we all had to make an effort, and I also had to make sure that I was making an effort into meeting with people online and Zooming, whether that was Zooming or FaceTime. So that was the biggest challenge for me, but then in a way it made me more organized, and that was something I was struggling with. And actually with this group, I have learned to become more organized. As the social media and fundraising chair, I've learned to make a list and have a list of people that I need to send emails to regards to fundraising, and it was very helpful with fundraising for our annual conversation that we have every October. And I had to make the list of people that were going to be our potential sponsors. So scheduling was something that helped me a lot.
So I know Mira also had a lot to say about online life, but both in terms of how she navigated social relationships, but also academic as well. So I'm gonna try and get her to give us some info.
Thank you so much. I can still hear you guys, so I'll be speaking. Unfortunately, I can't see you, but it's okay. So, just some background information. I have a visual impairment, so regarding navigating the online learning environment and going into that period of transition, it was difficult because I've had to learn all of these different forms of assistive technology. I'm getting more familiar with VoiceOver on my iPad and touch typing skills. So part of the online learning environment is about the usage of assistive technology, both in and outside of the classroom, to make sure that things can be more accessible, and it's about finding innovative ways to interact with the world. The connection is different because you haven't met them in person, so there's not really that social bond. It's more of chains, the occasional there's Zoom sessions, but when it comes to talking about accommodations and things, it makes things a bit more difficult. Sometimes, like, okay, you got like it. It's a difficult conversation to navigate because sometimes some professors will come to the point they don't necessarily understand why you will need your accommodations or how they can be beneficial. So it's about working on navigating those conversations. Be like, these accommodations in the classroom, such as being able to use assistive technology or have that time, help you to be successful in your classroom, especially during this whole period where we're all transitioning to the online learning environment. And that's something that I found to be very interesting. Some professors were really good in accommodating. Others, I had to take it a couple steps up and be able to talk to more people and be like, I need to make sure my accommodations are being met. So it's a challenge when those connections are different in the online space. And I think it's important to discuss those things as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've also had other presentations about how being in this new academic format also meant that the accommodations changed as well. Just because the different format of the course, and all of our panelists can certainly attest to that. Carly, do you have anything you want to add about online life and what was challenging or what you felt you were prepared for?
I can speak to, well, really we weren't prepared for the spring at all. Things were a little bit easier this past fall going forward, and I was very fortunate that because of my program, music performance requires us to do a lot of things in person. We were doing a mostly hybrid model. So when it comes to more academic classes like music theory and history and some of my technology classes, that was all online, and that was a bit tricky. But some of the other things we had to do that were related, like my lessons in performing in person, orchestra class, chamber music, we were still able to put that together. And I think really a lot of that kind of thing, what I wasn't doing online helped me with what I was, just to balance that in my life in that way. Because even though it wasn't the same, I mean, you can't have a 70-piece orchestra in the middle of COVID. It's not possible. It's not safe. Hopefully we'll be able to go back to that next year, but just those reduced format. But we were still able to get together and play, and that helped a lot. I found that my experience online varied a lot just because it was very inconsistent. The professors weren't used to doing that, even if they were prepared. You know, some are better with handling the technology, some are not. The expectations are different. One of the strangest things I find about being online is just the interface of Zoom. And the nature of it is that when you're in a lecture hall or a classroom just with a professor, the professor's at the front, the board is at the front, and everyone is facing forward. When you're on Zoom, everyone is looking at each other, you know, because you have all these faces in front of you, and it's kind of like everyone is staring you in the eye. And of course, they're not all the time, but it's very intimidating, and it makes it hard to focus in class on what you're supposed to be doing if everyone has their camera on. And often they do, because I had a couple professors that required that. Not all of them do, you know, and people tended to prefer the classes where they didn't, I will say that. And I had one that had a very interesting concept, because there's a setting on Zoom where you can hide your self-view, so you can't see yourself, but you can see everyone else. And that actually did help me focus, because then you're not paying attention to yourself as much and what you look like on camera. You know, you don't have to worry about that self-awareness. But the funny thing about that is sometimes I turned my camera back on and I'd be like half in and out of the frame, and it's interesting. But yeah, there was a lot to navigate there, but thankfully, because I was able to do some things in person still, I was able to manage it better, I think.
All right, so we're gonna wrap up with I'm going to bring up a few takeaways, and then we're going to have all of our panelists provide some takeaways that they personally feel were relevant to their experience. So based on what we've talked about so far, having grace for yourself and others was really important for all of us, for all of the panelists here, and making their social experiences what they were during the pandemic. And everybody is adapting to their social experiences. They're all making unique decisions about how to mitigate risk based on what they need to do to succeed socially and academically. A lot of our panelists also talked about having a game plan or some kind of approach in which they were intentional about building social engagement into their lives. So this is something that wasn't as intentional for them before the pandemic as it was during the pandemic. And then finally, some of them felt like they needed to connect with people in different ways. They needed to be more diverse with how they made social connections. This could be being on Zoom more. This could be using a lot of online social media. It could be connecting with different groups and clubs, like tennis clubs or your band, or something along those lines. So now I'm going to start at Evan, and each of our panelists is going to provide some word of wisdom about their experience and any lessons or takeaways they feel are important.
Yeah, so, it's been one roller coaster of a year, and I'm just saying, like, 2020 through 2021. I mean, I could say, like, the second semester, like, months January through March, and, like, even before that, it wasn't easy, There are times where I've honestly just been kind of lonely, and, I was spending a lot more time in my room than I could have been. I felt like I didn't have as much people to reach out to in this time as I would have liked. Somehow I made it through. I'm still here. I'm still standing. And I made it. And at the end of the day, I got into grad school. So, I guess all that pain and suffering and a lot of relaxation and time in bed must have made it work. And also getting that work done. It wasn't all fun and games and boredom and loneliness. But I could say I made it through. At the end of the day, it's all just about I'd say my lesson takeaway is persevering through tough times, even when you have a lot going for and against you. Just pushing through at the end of the day. I mean, I might have not had the best love life during the pandemic, and that was even before that. But I still made it through, and at the end of the day, I made it into grad school, and most of it's paid for. So at the end of the day, I'm thankful.
I agree with Evan on that. I think the most comforting thing for me was knowing that everyone was going through the same thing. It wasn't just me. And even though you do feel alone, it was comforting to know that a lot of people felt alone. So I always had to remind myself of that and kind of give myself grace, because it's really easy to put yourself into like hard situations. Like feeling that, you're alone and it's only you, but it's really common to find out there's a lot of people going through the same thing. And what was helpful for me was to realize that a lot of people are also not comfortable with reaching out to people. And so I took that to my advantage, and I made it a mission to be a little more open than I normally would have been, kind of reaching out to people and checking up on them. And because I know a lot of people were probably shy about checking up on other people. They didn't want to seem to be like a burden to others, and I felt that way too, but I realized that that it was a good thing to be the one to make the first move, I guess, and check up on people that I wasn't so close with. And I found that they were more than happy to talk with me, and they were really happy that I reached out. And so that made me feel better too.
All right, Carly, give us your word of wisdom.
One of the things I've found most interesting about this whole experience is just the duality inherent in it, and that it's been very humbling, whether you're struggling to figure out Zoom sound settings or just sitting at home bored with nothing to do. But at the same time, I think we've realized a lot about the potential of technology and what we can do with that, how that can help us in our lives and how connected we are. I mean, I don't think any of us would imagine what we'd been able to accomplish in the last year, even in spite of all the challenges we've dealt with. And as well, I have been actually kind of stunned by how many people are just willing to help if you're willing to reach out to them, whether it was just to listen to me play, just a friend to talk to, or, a sound check, anything like that. And that's been one of my major takeaways from this, is you're capable of more than you realize, and your network is maybe bigger than you think it is if you're just willing to reach out to people and make those connections. And a lot of the people that I've found in my life that way, I'm very grateful for. Now, Mira, if you would like to give your takeaway, we'll give you the spotlight here.
I have two takeaways actually. Into each other. That is key, and that there's an importance in leveraging the connection that you've made within your network, because within this time and even in the future, it's important to make sure that you're adaptable, whether that's in certain social situations or if that's in the if that's in the online or in-person learning environment. It's important to be adaptable, whether you use accommodations or not. Adaptability is key. You have to be flexible. You have to be quick on your feet and be able to learn things. It's important to be kind of like adaptability is key.
Uh-oh. Mira's closing words.
Oh,
You were breaking up on us. Can you restate that about
okay.
being, yeah.
About
Oh no.
I'll just restate it really quickly. I'd say that it's important to leverage your connections within your network, and that adaptability is key. Those are my two takeaways, because people want to support you and help you and build you up. All you have to do is ask.
Thank you for that, Mira.
Yeah, that was perfect. So at this point, we want to say thank you for listening to our talk, and we want to open up the floor for anyone to share their experiences or ask us any questions before our survey. Oh yeah, we also have T-shirts. Oh, T-shirts. All right. Oh, okay. Yeah. They do need the microphone to ask the question. All right. Here you are.
Thank you. So I'm curious, what are all your guys' different conditions, like disabilities or conditions you guys have?
I was diagnosed with high functioning autism when I was 5. Overcome a lot of challenges with social skills and reading comprehension growing up. Yeah, I've overcome a lot with that. You probably wouldn't have been able to tell if I had high functioning autism or not. That's how much I guess overcome change is a way to put it.
When I was 8, I was diagnosed with ADD and APD. And APD is like a new learning disorder. It's called audio processing disorder. So it's pretty much just like a delayed response. If I hear something, I'll probably have to ask people to repeat it sometimes, just because I don't get all the information at once.
Okay.
My diagnosis is autism spectrum disorder, and I was actually diagnosed relatively late when I was 17. Mira, they're asking what our conditions are.
Thank you. I think just restating the question to me would be the most helpful to make sure I can hear it correctly. I was born with retinopathy, which causes multiple blood vessel growth in the area around the retina. So I had to have multiple surgeries known as
Oh, wow.
vitrectomy and laser eye surgery, which narrowed my field of vision and also caused blind spots. So I have to use a lot of sorts of different assistive technology into visual impairment, and sometimes, right now, I'm dealing with an eye infection. So not to get too much, and that's why I can't be here in person today. I'm having some issues with my right eye, but it's healing up and it's healing well. But I have a visual impairment. So, in regards to I think of it as a part of my identity rather than a separate entity that is there
Does anyone else have any questions? All right. Here you go.
So was it difficult to get into FSU, like the applying process and like just getting in? Thank you.
It's not too bad. I think what helped me really secure my spot at FSU was just to really sell myself and be authentic. So.
I could say something about it too. I mean, you know, I only sell my, I'm only, I sell myself when I have to, and when it's required for me to do so. I don't like the word sell. I like the word more express.
That's good. That's a better word.
Yeah. So it wasn't harder than like any other college to get into. I got good grades. I had good SAT scores, and have a bit of a unique story, different from everyone else. So that's the story with me getting into FSU for undergrad. And I can say with grad school was a little. With grad school it was a similar process, though I didn't have to apply. I didn't have to do as many standardized tests, and funding was probably harder to obtain. It was probably harder to get into grad school than it was for undergrad.
And also finding your niche is a good advice for me because I found what I like to do. Like I was lucky I already knew what I wanted to do before I entered college, so I just reached out to the community at FSU that was interested in what I was interested in. So.
Yeah, and just to sprinkle it in, there's more than one way to get into FSU. Like as far as I know, that all of our panelists just went straight into FSU. You could also transfer in, which is what I personally did. And so I started at a different university and I transferred over. And allegedly, that is an easier process because they have direct evidence of your success in college. All right, does anyone have any other questions? All right, I'm gonna go all the way in the, yeah, I'm gonna go all the way in the back. Okay.
Keep doing what you're doing. I have Tourette's, but I graduated with a master's, and now I'm working up a doctor's at the University of Hawaii. Keep doing what you're doing.
That's awesome. All right, we have another question over here. Here, I'm handing you the microphone right now.
Was it hard for you having to go through college with your disability? Just curious. Like, was it difficult to like kind of fit in or something?
Yeah, I felt like really, I was kind of embarrassed to reach out to the Office of Accessibilities because I just didn't know how professors were going to react. But then I had to realize that I shouldn't care about how they react. I should be confident in making sure that I do well, and that's the most important thing is making sure that you have all the tools you need to do well. So.
I could say something too. As far as reaching out to it was referred to as the SDRC at the time, the Student Disability Resource Center, and then it changed to the Office of Accessibility Services about I think my senior year. I think it was. I remember it was actually my mom actually thought about it first for me to get registered with the SDRC before I did. I think if it wasn't for her, I'm not sure I would have gotten registered or not. It just didn't cross my mind at the time, but then she brought it up. And I wasn't really uncomfortable signing up. I got a lot of accommodations I needed regarding taking tests, and I become more involved with it over time. Even became a SDRC ambassador, switched to OAS ambassador, and I found this group.
That's awesome. Wow.
I think this group has helped a lot. It's great that you asked this question actually because we did a presentation on this last year talking about transitioning to college. And just my experience was a little bit different because I had various services and supports going through grade school, but I never had a formalized IEP or anything. So just trying to figure out the accommodations process was all new to me and all that official aspect of it. And as well, I wasn't ever really concerned about the academic qualifying aspect of college because that was always one of my strengths and just being able to play well enough on my instrument. But it was more about being able to live independently. That was always kind of the question is, if we put Carly in a dorm room by herself, will she like survive? So that was an interesting experience
JR, do you want to add to that at all? Given that you've also gone through multiple levels of college as a person with a disability?
The question again?
So the question is, what challenges might your disability have posed while you were in college?
Right. Well, I think as a person with a disability, a person with an obvious disability, I've dealt with both the stigma issues and perceived lack of intellectual and physical abilities. I think it's up to each of us to represent yourself, to believe in yourself, have that confidence, and put in the due diligence. I think those of us within the disability community know stuff happens, and you need to be prepared. You need to be ahead of the game. You need to be organized. You need to be unafraid to ask for help. Be unafraid to receive that help. Whether you need it or not, it's important that you have the choice or the tool or the lifeguard. As a faculty member now, being on the other side of the equation or the coin, I have, I guess, a better sensitivity of the need to challenge the students, but then ultimately it is the student's choice whether or not they need an accommodation, whether or not they need to be registered at the OAS or any other kind of resource they may require, and it's up to them to self-disclose. And all 4 of these students up here, their disability is a part of their life, but doesn't define their life. They are Evan, they are Nora, they are Carly, right, they are Mira. I am JR. Our disability is just a part of that story. And I think each generation, each course, each major will have its own sets of challenges. But as you have learned from these outstanding students, much can be done even during a pandemic. So please join me in thanking them for a wonderful. Cool. Thank you. Please follow us on Facebook. Please feel free to engage us anytime. We'd love to see you on campus, and please leave the little survey for the students at the end for us.
We'll also be here if you want to walk up and talk to us more and ask us any questions.